right, hello and welcome to another Expert Insight interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP, online sales magazine, and Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from a sunny San Diego. And today I'm delighted to be joined all the way from Australia, from beautiful Melbourne, Carmen Sederino. How are you doing, Carmen?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on the show, John.
Absolutely. And Carmen's founder and performance master at Illuminated Story. You have a Bachelor of Performing Arts from Monash, is that correct?
That's right, Monash
University.
University in Melbourne.
Yeah, and 18 years of corporate leadership experience managing a 300 million portfolio. And you combine deep theatrical training with real world business acumen. You have a 5-star framework systematically that builds vocal dynamics, body language, and emotional choreography, skills that create lasting competitive advantage in an AI driven world. And that's what we want to talk about today. So you went from being a profoundly shy child, right?
I did.
Yeah.
I was the kind of shy where when you were little, I'd sort of hide behind my parents' legs and
Right.
look up at adults like, oh, please don't ask me a question.
So,
But my mum enrolled me in calisthenics. So it's kind of, I don't know if you know
yeah, I
calisthenics.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was only 5, and I loved going every week and doing the rehearsals and learning the dance. And then concert time came. And my mum thought, oh my goodness, like she's either not going to get on stage at all or I'm going to have to wait in the wings when she runs off crying. But
Right.
it didn't happen. I got out under those lights and I was waving and smiling and having the time of my life. So
Yeah.
that was my happy place, it turned out.
Yeah. So obviously, and that and theatrical training that played a great, obviously a great role in developing how you show up and your presence and all of that kind of thing.
Mm.
How can AI compete with that, or can it?
Well, I mean, I don't think it can.
Mhm.
I hope it can't in the future. Right now, definitely not. I don't know what's being
Yeah.
developed, but when you think about it, that human connection is what we crave the most. And I mean, I love AI. I use it for many
Sure.
things in my own business. I think it can make us go faster in so many ways, but it can't replace the connection that you can get when you're speaking in person to a room full of people.
Mhm.
And I think we should take advantage of it as entrepreneurs, as salespeople. If you're invited to go and speak on your expertise at an industry event or conference, then say yes and then figure out how to do it because it's a skill you can learn.
Mhm.
And it gives you the opportunity to speak in front of your marketplace, most likely, and tell them all about what you do and why it's good for them, but why they should connect with you further. And that gives you an advantage that no technical or AI system can give you, I believe.
Yeah. So learning, like from your theatrical training and that, so people learning things like commanding a room and spatial awareness and things like that. Explain that, how those make a big difference. Because I don't think most people, when they go in to do a presentation, are thinking about spatial awareness or
Mm.
commanding the room. They're thinking about, getting their message out, and they're hopefully like looking at different people and trying to find a friendly face.
Yeah, that's very true. So I think, I mean, in my career, I've worked with many senior people, so CEOs, MDs, GMs,
Mhm.
who are invited to these industry events and conferences and sometimes go and speak kicking and screaming.
Yes.
And I think from a spatial awareness point of view that you were talking about, we've got to realize that in the office, so if you're in a small meeting room or if you're in a boardroom, there's a certain amount of space provided for the person that's speaking.
Mhm.
And then if you're on a big stage, there's a whole lot more space for the
Yep.
person that's speaking. So if you do the same thing, if you present the same way that you do in the boardroom on the stage, then you're probably going to look a little bit flat
Mhm.
because you've got all this extra space around you. You need bigger gestures, arm gestures and body movement than you would in the boardroom,
Mhm.
and a bigger voice and more energy up there for you to look normal.
Yeah.
And if you did that same thing in the boardroom, they'd think you've gone crazy. So we've got to think about, where are you actually delivering? And then you need to shift the way that you deliver for the space that you're in.
Mhm. And then you also have to look at things like your what do you talk about, elements of embodied presence. I really like that term, by embodied presence, but I think that's another part where people don't realize that there are all these little micro things that all contribute.
Yeah, this is probably one of the biggest objections that I get when I'm coaching, or before I'm coaching people, really, when
Mhm.
they're deciding whether they
Okay.
want to go down this path or not. Because so when you're speaking, when you're doing a keynote or you're presenting in the office, you're obviously not playing a character. You
Mhm.
are yourself. But you can tap into performance elements or the performance training that I had for many years. So think about, you've got to make choices. First of all, I just want to say that, especially in business, people generally spend about 99.95% of their time building a slide deck and about 0.5% actually practicing it before
Oh,
they
yeah.
leave the room.
I'm not
And
even
I would
sure. I'm not even
encourage
sure
you
it's 5%. I'm not even sure it's that high.
yeah, I would encourage you to shift that. Let's try and at least get some
Mhm.
50-50 happening, because your content and your message are so important. You need to spend time on that, like you probably are.
Mhm.
And the way you say it is just as important. And if you can get both of those happening, that's when you're going to get excellent. Um, so let's go back to the embodied presence.
Yeah.
So especially when you are in the bigger spaces, and for some people it's even just when you're up in the office environment, because for some reason it can make people shrink. I've seen
Mhm. Yeah.
so many brilliant people in my corporate career who are just incredible, but unfortunately they get up and they present and everything shrinks, and they're not embodying who they actually are.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
what I want you to think about is, how can you on purpose, through your rehearsals that you're going to do now, because you're going to do your 50-50 split, make choices about which part of you needs to be present when you're delivering certain sections of your talk. And what I mean by that is, think about you maybe when you're going to, say, a church or a place of worship. Maybe your voice is quieter and you use smaller movements and you have to behave in a certain way. And you do that. And it's 100% authentically you,
Mhm.
and you're, 100% present in certain moments when you're there. And then think of yourself at your favorite sporting event, and maybe you're yelling and cheering and, yelling at the umpires, maybe
Yeah.
even, and you're using a big voice and big arm gestures and a very expressive face. That is also 100% authentically
Yeah.
you. Because people are so worried about, I want to be authentic. I don't want to, pretend to be someone else up there. And you shouldn't. And you also shouldn't uh, just stick to one particular range when you're using your voice and your body, because that's when we get the boring presentations and you're not
Mm.
captivating the room and people aren't remembering what you want them to remember.
Yeah. No, and I think that's a really good and important point, because, authenticity has been thrown around like a lot over the last few
Mm.
years. And I think it was even like word of the year or something 3 years ago or
Oh,
something,
was it?
Yeah, I think Merriam-Webster had it. I think it was authenticity or something. But as you say, and then there's people out there now who are actually training people to be authentic, which I think is, well, that's interesting in itself.
It
Um,
is.
uh, but your point being is, like, just because you embracing your authentic self is like just being yourself and showing up as yourself, but that doesn't mean that you don't use the tools available to you for the situation, right? That's not being
Mm.
inauthentic. That's just accentuating your authenticity by using the appropriate tools for the circumstance.
Exactly, which is what you do naturally in other circumstances.
Precisely, precisely.
Mm.
Talk to me a little bit. I love this about the concept of emotional choreography.
Mm. I guess, I mean, it's similar to what we were just talking
Yeah.
about, and I think it's most prevalent in that event speaking type arena. I've I've, as I said, coached many executives to get onto the stage, and one of the things that we do have to tap into is, if you're telling an emotional story, then we need to be in alignment with that story and make sure the way that we're delivering it has that emotion behind it. So, if I use an example of one of my clients, he's actually a professional rugby coach based in South Africa.
Hmm.
was a professional rugby player, now coach, and he speaks to corporates about high performance and team cohesion and topics like that. Unfortunately, when he was very young, his father was murdered in their local town, in apartheid South Africa, and he was telling that story along with all of the famous rugby people he's played with, all the famous cricketers he knows, and it was just like a laundry list of, yep, this, and this has happened in my life, and so now I do this. And we had to really work on pulling all of that apart. And I said to my client, that's not landing at all. Like, we're like, oh, that's sad, and that's it. There's no more connection for the audience that's happening at that point. And it's not that we want the audience to feel sorry for him, but we want them to feel the emotion of what he would have felt and why he is now such a high performer, because he came up with this there is no plan B scenario, because then his mum had to obviously figure out how she was going to support the whole family. And and so his work ethic and drive and everything that's made him high performance comes from that moment. So we really needed to bring the emotion out in that moment. And I think that's a great example. And I've, worked with so many corporates, and I remember this one person who he was interviewing for, he was already in leadership, but he was interviewing for a more senior leadership position. And he didn't get the job because of his presentation. So that's how important speaking is in business. And they'd put him through my program to give him another chance, because they obviously think he's good and they want him to get there. So he had to deliver on why he was going to be a good leader. And it was all very logical, all of the experience he's had in the business. And I said, we need to bring something more emotive in here. That's what you're missing, that didn't get you the job. And he's like, oh, well, I was going to talk about my nonna and how she's always been the leader in our family and how much I've learned from her, but I just thought that was a bit too personal. And I'm like, that is exactly what needs to go into this presentation. And so as soon as he started tapping into that, he naturally tapped into that more emotive side. One caveat though, and I also have a podcast and I interview speakers from all over the world. And a speaker that I had on that had to speak in front of 40,000 people. He was the global chief people officer at McDonald's at the time. He got taught by an actor that if you are telling an emotional story, the audience needs to see that you are affected by it and that there is emotion there, but you can't lose it on stage. So don't start crying yourself, because as soon as you do that, you actually take the emotion on and the audience doesn't feel it. But if you can hold that tension, that's when the audience can feel it.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's such a fine line, that you have to be careful of, because that can immediately go into sympathy and then to awkwardness, right? If you're not careful, if you're getting too emotionally caught up in something yourself as a speaker, people maybe relate and then they start to back off because it's a little bit too awkward.
Yeah, I agree. And it's actually really hard for the speaker. I have had people break down in rehearsals where they're talking about something very challenging to talk about. And sometimes I'll just say, look, it's a great story. It does help your point, but you're not ready to tell it. I don't think it's a good idea, because if this happens in the moment, it's going to be really hard for you to continue and speak, and you're not going to get the result that you want. So there is a fine line with some of those emotional stories, and you have to make a call on whether you're ready yet to share it.
Yeah, absolutely, because you want to connect emotionally without overwhelming, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. And tell me, what have you seen in when you train people? What are some of their breakthrough moments, like their ahas, when they realize that maybe, they felt like, I'm somebody who got I'm terrible at this. Nobody wants to listen to me, or I'm boring, or whatever. What are the breakthroughs like?
I think there's a couple of sections of the process, I'd say, where there's breakthroughs. So one is when I pull apart their content and just show them that the way they've got it structured currently is not helping them
Mhm.
be captivating. So I think especially salespeople, which is interesting because in sales, you know the process. Or most salespeople know that you've got to build rapport with the customer, you've got to
Mhm.
understand their needs before you then start selling and telling them how you can help them. And a presentation should be the same. So a lot of sales presentations I find start with us, like
Oh, yeah.
why you should buy from us, our company history, all the things.
Look at all the
And
logos. Look
and
at
so
all the
I
logos.
normally I'm like, let's flip that. Let's give them something interesting that they're
Mhm.
going to be like, oh, it's worth me continuing to listen to this person. Can we give them, some industry insights or things that you've discovered that would be valuable for them? Anything that's going to be about them or help them is what we want to put up the top
Mhm.
before, and that builds the trust and rapport and all the rest of it before you go into how you could help them with that problem.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of aha moments when we're looking at the content. And usually, if we're talking about business people, when I'm stripping down their PowerPoint deck and showing them that they are much more powerful without it. So my mantra is you are the lead in the message, and any tools you use, and PowerPoint's one of the tools,
Mhm.
is the supporting cast. It
Yeah.
should not give your talk for you. It is there to help add impact.
And it's a tool, not a crutch, right?
Yes, yes, it's a tool.
Yeah,
And it's a tool you can choose, so you don't always
mhm.
need it. And if you do, let's lean towards amazing imagery that's helping the audience remember your message, because that pictures are so hard, easy, not
Yeah.
hard, so easy to remember. So there's that content part, and then the other breakthrough moments are normally when I'm sometimes getting them to do some silly exercises to bring them out of themselves. So
Mhm.
I might get them to pretend they're some kind of famous person, and I'll draw on people that have certain qualities. So they'll see them as completely over the top and excited, or they
Mhm.
might see them as really stern and hard. And so I'm trying to draw out different things that this person has inside them. And then I get them to do it normally again, and they have more range when they
Ah.
deliver, and I film it. So normally it's once they see the tape that they think, ah, okay, I can see how this is better, because it doesn't always feel better to start with. Like
Mm.
when you're learning anything,
Sure,
it
sure, sure.
it can feel really awkward to start with. So I think seeing the evidence on the video is what people need for the breakthrough sometimes.
Yeah. And I feel, Carmen, in many ways that this is becoming more and more important because attention spans have gone down. People operate in different ways than they used to. People, let's face it, like people are a lot ruder than they used to be. I mean, you could be sitting doing a presentation and people are going to like take out their phone and look at it. They're going to do all these
Mm.
things. So there's attention span, there's distractions and everything. So it becomes, as you said, number one, you need to command the room and you need to command their attention. But the second part is, and I feel like this undoes a lot of people, is you have to make sure you just don't get triggered by things, right?
Mm.
You see somebody take out their phone and immediately you go, oh, my presentation is crap. Like there maybe there's 10 people in the room, the other nine are like, riveted, but you're fixated on this one person and now it just derails everything.
Yes, I've had those moments where I've been speaking, and I had one particular one where there was someone sitting right in the front, and they had this really challenging look on their face. For those of you who are watching on video, it was like this, like
Mhm.
looking at me like this, and I thought, "Oh my goodness, what am I saying that is causing that face?" Like, as I'm talking
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
and saying the words I needed to say, this is what was going through my head. And, luckily, I had an opportunity in a break to go up and talk to him, and I said, "Oh, how are you enjoying the day?" And he said, "Oh, it's very interesting." So for those again that aren't watching a video, I just pulled exactly the
Yeah.
same face that he was pulling,
Yeah.
and so that must have been his concentration face. But when I was up on stage, to me, it meant I was doing something wrong.
Yeah.
You just don't know what's going on in people's days. I've had the phone thing. I've had people apologize in breaks for using phones. because they've realized I've tried to draw them in, and it turns out that their mum's in hospital and
Yeah.
they need to leave as soon as they get the call, or, something like that. Now,
Yeah.
in saying that, the content structuring I was talking about early,
Mhm.
that's where you've got the opportunity to really think about how do I call it continue to hook the audience in. So most people know they've got to do a really cool start and a really great ending. The middle is the most dangerous place that
Yeah.
you're going to lose them, because that's often where the heavy business content
Yeah.
is. And we've got to keep that up. We've got to keep hooking people in. And you're right. There was a doctor years ago, I think a good maybe 15, 20 years ago, that did a study on presenters. And he found that exactly 10 minutes into any presentation, if the presenter didn't change gears, he called
Mm.
it, then they would lose their audience.
Yeah.
That's got to be within about 30 seconds now because of our
Yeah.
scrolling.
Oh, yeah. And it's almost like I had this great interview a couple of years ago, Carmen, this guy, Ruben, who represented Argentina in the Winter Olympics. He just decided he wanted to be in the Olympics.
Oh,
And
wow.
he
You just
and
decided.
yeah, well, he decided no, he did, and he looked at it and he said, like, Summer Games too hard, Winter Olympics doable. So
Okay.
he's gone to he's the oldest and he's been to the most Olympics or something doing luge, right?
Wow.
But here's the interesting part is, so the luge, going down, lying on that thing and going down all the bends.
Mm.
And, he was never doing that well. And then one day, this German coach, he'd been doing this for years, and German coach comes to him after a training run. And he said to him, "What was your objective?" And he said, "Well, to get to the bottom as fast as I can." And he goes, "Yeah, well, that's your problem." And he goes, "What?" And he goes, "Your objective is to get to the next corner as fast as you can.
Mm.
Then your next goal is to get to the next corner as fast as you can, right?" And once
Mhm.
he brought it, cut it down into those, started
Mm.
to go way faster. And I think
Good.
there's a lot of that to take now with attention spans, and like your goal is to hold their attention, and then you hold their attention right now, and then move and hold their attention to the next part
Yeah.
and the next part, knowing that it's something that you have to continually do throughout your presentation.
So true. I love that, and I might steal that
Yeah,
from you,
go
that
ahead. Yeah.
story. That's a great story, and I completely agree, you're right. It is. It's okay, how in every section of this, I was gonna say show then, because I help thought leaders and, speakers now elevate their
Mhm.
keynote, what I call keynote shows.
Yeah.
But even just a presentation in the office or wherever you're speaking, yeah, how do you continue to hold that attention the whole time? And one little tip for those of you who are speaking in meeting rooms often, and sometimes you're doing long, strategic presentations,
Mhm.
and there are a lot of slides. I've sat through them. Every now and then, if you feel like you don't have the attention of the room and you do have your slides on the whole time, just press, if you're in PowerPoint live, press B on your keyboard and it will black it out, and the attention will straight away come back to you, no matter what's been happening in the room, because everyone's like, "Oh, what just happened?" And then talk to the room for a moment without your slides, and just
Yeah.
get everyone back on track, get your message happening, and then get back into it.
Yeah, that's a really, really good tip, people should look at, because then that's a great way of getting their attention back, but also having a moment to pause and just get their feedback, get their interaction, all of that. Because I think you just touched on another point there. Because sometimes, you know, people are so nervous, or they want to, that they're determined to get through it, right? So get
Yes,
through it as
so
fast
true.
as they can, and then whatever. But the fact is, you don't want to get through it as fast as you can. You want to get through it as effectively as you can. And sometimes, um, more pauses are better. It actually is far better in the end. It's slightly longer, but with pauses.
Most of the time, I completely agree. Pause is the most underutilized tool and delivery tool in the business world for sure. And when I am working with my corporate clients, I'm constantly saying, okay. And then, and in exercise, I'll say, okay, so pause, and there'll be like this nanosecond pause
Yeah,
that they'll do.
yeah,
So then I end up saying, I'm going to like count for you. I'm going to hold my hand up. I'm going to give you the 1, 2, and then you get to talk again, and they feel like it's the most excruciating thing they've ever
Yeah,
had to
yeah.
do. But then if there's people in the room watching them with me, their colleagues, I'll say, "How did it feel for you?" And they're like, "Oh, it's brilliant." Like,
Mhm.
from an audience perspective, it feels good. So this is why presenting and public speaking is not something you can just learn by listening to theory or reading books. You've actually got to put it into practice, like the athlete going down the
Yeah,
hill at the
yeah,
Olympics.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
got to actually do it physically, because you got to feel what it feels like and get through the part where the new feels awkward into
Mhm.
that becomes your new normal, and you're comfortable with pauses,
Yeah.
and you do hold the room more when you give them.
Yeah. Well, because that's the other thing is we're so afraid of silence, right?
Mm,
But if I deliver something very profound or great insight and stuff, and I don't give you a moment to even think about it, and I
yes.
just go on. I mean, and
Mm,
that's why sometimes I feel like people fear the silence. They're like, "Oh, I have to keep. Oh, there's a silence here." You think, no, this is silence because you've just said something impactful, and you're giving people a moment to actually to think about it and to digest it.
yeah, I mean, it's a great sales technique, isn't it? Silence and
Yeah, but
and yes,
you'd be amazed how many people are so scared of, like, a silence, like, and especially now with virtual, yeah, it's like the minute there's a silence, they feel, "Oh, I gotta fill the void," right? It's like
yeah.
dead you remember, like, on radio, it was always dead air, like, that was the worst thing you could have on radio was dead air, right? Somebody not speaking because then people would change the station or think their radio's broken.
Mm,
And people have adopted that and they think, oh, if there's dead air in this conversation, I have to fill it. And you're going, what? You just asked somebody a question and you're not even going to give them a moment to think about their answer.
mm. It is true. It is our natural human instinct, especially when we're talking to someone that we don't know really well. So
Yeah.
if you're, across from a client that's new and you don't know them
Mhm.
really deeply, then I always think of it, it's like if you're going out on a date for the
Mhm.
first time and there's a silence and it's just awkward, and so the instinct is, "I've got to fill this gap as fast as possible. This is awful, like, I can't sit in this any longer." And so I think it's this human instinct to feel like we have to fill the gap. But
Mhm.
if you've been married for 20 years and you're at dinner, there's probably lots of silences and you're both sitting there pretty comfortable
Yeah.
because you know each other so well, it's okay to not have to fill the air with
Yeah.
words constantly.
Yeah, yeah. So don't wait. Like, I'm 25 years married now. So yeah, so don't wait that long to get comfortable with
Yeah.
silences.
Yes. Use it now as a very, very good technique to use.
Exactly. Well, listen, thanks, Carmen. This has been fascinating. So much great information. All of Carmen's information will be below the video. But before we go, please do remind people about what you do.
Yes, I help leaders and speakers elevate their keynotes into what I call a keynote show. So that's really blending traditional keynote speaking with performance elements to create an unforgettable experience for their audience.
Fantastic. Well, listen, thanks again, Carmen. Thank you for watching and listening. See you all again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.